When we think of childhood, we think of innocence, laughter, maybe scraped knees or bad report cards. But what happens when a child becomes a killer? What happens when the face of evil is only 10 years old? Tonight, we uncover the most disturbing truth of all: sometimes, monsters don't wait to grow up. Youth is often viewed through a lens of innocence, with society traditionally associating young people with purity and potential. However, this ideal is starkly challenged by a number of young individuals who have committed unspeakable acts of violence. These cases, particularly those of young serial killers, serve as unsettling reminders that the potential for darkness exists within even the youngest members of society. From children who have taken lives at an alarmingly early age to teenagers carrying out horrific crimes, the concept of youth as innocent begins to unravel when faced with these tragic events. Throughout history, there have been cases that highlight the disturbing reality of youth violence. Amarjit Sada, for example, holds the title of the world's youngest serial killer, allegedly taking 3 lives before the age of 8. The sheer brutality of such crimes committed by such a young child forces us to confront uncomfortable questions about the factors that could lead to this kind of violence. These cases force a re-examination of our beliefs about childhood and innocence, challenging the notion that youth is always a period of growth and development. The article that follows aims to delve deeper into the psychology behind youth violence, focusing particularly on the motivations and influences that shape young serial killers. It will explore how psychological factors, such as mental illness or trauma, can manifest in violent behavior. Furthermore, it will examine the societal factors, such as family dynamics and media influence, that may play a crucial role in nurturing violent tendencies in children and teenagers. By understanding these elements, we can better grasp the complexity of juvenile crime and the troubling reality that some young people can harbor a capacity for violence far beyond what we might expect. In the cases that follow, we will encounter not just one, but several individuals who challenge our preconceptions about youth and crime. These stories will serve as a lens through which to explore the dark potential that can lie dormant within children and adolescents. As we reflect on their backgrounds, their crimes, and the societal responses to their actions, it becomes clear that the question is not simply about why they did it, but also about what this says about the environment that allowed such darkness to take root. The journey into the psychology of young serial killers reveals a complex interplay between nature, nurture, and the choices made by individuals who, in some cases, may have never been given the support they needed. Amarjit Sada, who gained infamy as the world's youngest serial killer, was born in the village of Musahar in Bihar, India. Growing up in a struggling family environment, Amarjit's early life was shaped by poverty and hardship. His parents faced financial difficulties, and his childhood was marked by isolation. Despite being a child, Amarjit became known for his increasingly violent behavior, a shocking contrast to the typical image of innocence that is often associated with youth. At just 7 years old, Amarjit began his brutal killings. His first victim was his cousin, a child in his care. Amarjit reportedly engaged in cruel behavior, starting with acts like pinching and slapping the baby. These early signs of violence escalated when he strangled the infant, causing its death. The gruesome nature of this act was not just a reflection of his cruelty, but also a harbinger of the disturbing path his life would take. After committing the murder, he buried the body beneath some grass, returning home as though nothing had occurred. His family, particularly his parents, responded with disbelief. Rather than reporting the crime to authorities, they chose to cover it up, with his father physically punishing him but ultimately opting not to involve the police. Tragically, Amarjit's violence did not end with his cousin. His next victim was his own sister, who was just 8 months old. Amarjit strangled her while his parents slept, an act that highlighted both his escalating cruelty and the inability of those around him to recognize the gravity of his behavior. Amarjit's family was aware of the crimes but chose to keep them within the family, allowing the violence to continue unchecked. The final straw came in 2007 when Amarjit allegedly killed a third victim, a 6-month-old girl named USU. He strangled the baby and reportedly hit her with a brick before leading villagers to the location where he had buried her. It was only after this third murder that the authorities were notified. When police arrested Amarjit, he confessed to the murders of his cousin and sister, revealing the disturbingly methodical nature of his killings. Despite his young age, his acts were chilling in their deliberateness, a testament to the deep psychological issues he faced. Amarjit's case shocked not just his community but the world, raising questions about the psychological and societal factors that can drive a child to commit such heinous acts. His background, marked by poverty and neglect, seemed to play a role in shaping his violent tendencies. Experts pointed to his lack of early intervention and the absence of a stable support system as contributing factors. These elements, combined with his apparent indifference to his crimes, created a chilling portrait of a child with a potential for darkness that many might never have imagined possible. The societal implications of Amarjit's actions were profound. The case highlighted the complexities of juvenile crime and the challenges in dealing with young offenders, especially those who commit violent acts at an early age. Under Indian law, a child cannot be sent to prison but can be detained at a children's home until reaching adulthood. This has sparked debates about the effectiveness of the juvenile justice system in handling cases where the crimes committed are so severe. Amarjit's case remains a poignant reminder of the potential for violence in children and how society must address the underlying factors that contribute to such tragedies. Amarjit's case is a stark contrast to the typical notion of youth as innocent and pure. It challenges the assumption that children are always a product of their environment in a way that encourages growth and compassion. The horrific actions of this young boy have forced a global reflection on how we understand childhood, innocence, and the darker potential within the human psyche. As we move forward, it is essential to consider the broader implications of such cases, not just for the victims and their families but for society as a whole. On July 22, 2015, a tragic and shocking event unfolded in Broken Arrow, Oklahoma, as Robert and Michael Bever carried out a brutal attack on their own family. Armed with knives and a hatchet, the brothers launched a calculated assault inside their family home, resulting in the deaths of their parents, David and April Bever, as well as their siblings, Daniel and Victoria Bever. The brutality of the crime was terrifying, an almost unimaginable act of violence carried out by two teenagers on their own family members. The motives behind this horrific crime have been the subject of much speculation and investigation. Robert and Michael Bever had long been fascinated with violence and crime, and it appears that their shared interest in such behavior played a significant role in the attack. Throughout their childhood, the brothers reportedly displayed a disturbing obsession with violent media and criminal behavior. They were known to have spent a significant amount of time researching criminal acts, which may have influenced their decision to commit the murders. This fascination with violence raises important questions about the impact of exposure to such material, particularly on impressionable young minds. Family dynamics and personal grievances also contributed to the brothers' actions. Growing up in a household where there were reports of strained relationships, the Bever brothers may have harbored deep-seated anger toward their parents and siblings. While the exact reasons for the attack remain unclear, the brothers' actions suggest an underlying frustration or resentment that ultimately led to this unthinkable tragedy. It is possible that the brothers felt isolated or overlooked within their family, and this may have exacerbated their violent tendencies. In the wake of the murders, the legal proceedings were swift and intense. Due to the extreme nature of the crime, both Robert and Michael Bever were tried as adults. The severity of their actions and the calculated manner in which the crime was carried out led to life sentences without the possibility of parole. In 2016, Robert Bever pleaded guilty to 5 counts of first-degree murder, ensuring that he would spend the rest of his life behind bars. Michael Bever, who opted for a trial, was found guilty on all charges in 2018 and was also sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The Bever brothers' case serves as a chilling reminder of the potential for violence that can exist within families and the complex psychological factors that may lead to such tragic events. The influence of violent media, familial tensions, and the lack of early intervention in addressing behavioral issues all played a role in shaping their actions. The case has sparked important conversations about the nature of juvenile crime, the mental health of young offenders, and the challenges faced by the criminal justice system in dealing with such heinous acts committed by individuals who are still minors. As we reflect on this devastating tragedy, it is essential to consider not just the specifics of the Bever brothers' actions but the broader societal implications. How can we better understand the psychological and environmental factors that contribute to juvenile violence? What can be done to prevent similar tragedies in the future, and how should society handle young offenders who commit such extreme acts? These are the questions that continue to haunt the memory of the Bever family and the community of Broken Arrow, Oklahoma, in the wake of this family's devastating loss. On January 29, 1979, Brenda Spencer, a 16-year-old high school student, opened fire at Grover Cleveland Elementary School in San Diego, California, killing 2 people and injuring 9 others. The shocking act of violence was followed by a chilling statement she made when asked why she committed the crime: "I don't like Mondays." This phrase would go down in history, not just as a description of a personal feeling, but as a grim reflection of the severity of the act itself. Spencer's shooting marked one of the first school shootings in U.S. history, an event that would spark nationwide debates on gun control, juvenile justice, and the psychology behind such violent acts. Spencer's background provides important context for understanding her motivations. She grew up in a troubled household with a history of domestic issues. Raised in a family where mental health problems were evident, Spencer's behavior had been troubling for years prior to the shooting. Her father, a man with his own struggles, had a distant relationship with her, and her mother reportedly exhibited an unhealthy level of emotional neglect. Spencer's early signs of aggression were overlooked, and she was reported to have a fascination with firearms. Despite her school's attempts to address her behavioral issues, Spencer continued to show signs of growing hostility. The psychological factors behind Spencer's violent outburst have been a focal point for analysts trying to understand why she committed such a horrific crime at such a young age. At the time of the shooting, Spencer had been prescribed medication for depression, a mental health issue that could have played a significant role in her actions. Her fascination with guns also pointed to deeper issues surrounding her mental state and the way she viewed violence as a solution to her internal struggles. Many experts argue that her violent tendencies were exacerbated by a lack of proper emotional support and mental health care during her formative years. The aftermath of the shooting revealed much about society's handling of juvenile violence and the role of gun control. Spencer's case ignited heated debates on the accessibility of firearms, especially to minors. It raised questions about the responsibility of gun ownership and the implications of selling weapons to young, troubled individuals. In the years that followed, there were significant shifts in discussions about juvenile crime. Should minors who commit such brutal acts be tried as adults? Spencer's trial was a turning point for how society viewed the punishment of young offenders, especially in cases involving premeditated violence. Although Spencer was convicted and sentenced to 25 years to life in prison, her case highlighted the growing concerns over juvenile sentencing and the long-term effects of early trauma. In many ways, Spencer's shooting was a precursor to the many similar incidents that would follow in the decades to come. Her crime raised important questions about how we handle both mental health and violent tendencies in youth. Could more preventative measures have stopped Spencer before she took her first life? As the years pass, the national conversation continues to revolve around how best to prevent future acts of youth violence. Gun control remains a highly contentious issue, with many arguing for stricter regulations to prevent the accessibility of firearms to those who may be at risk of committing similar crimes. Moreover, the treatment of juvenile offenders, especially those who commit heinous acts, continues to raise ethical and legal questions. Brenda Spencer's shooting remains a haunting example of how deeply societal and psychological factors can intertwine, leading to tragic outcomes that leave lasting impacts on communities. In the end, Spencer's crime, while not the first of its kind, stands as one of the earliest examples of the school shootings that would become tragically common in the years that followed. The ripple effects of her actions are still felt today, as debates continue on the root causes of such violence, the role of gun control, and how society addresses juvenile delinquency. These ongoing discussions remind us of the importance of understanding the complex factors that contribute to such violent acts, and the need for intervention before a tragedy occurs. Edmund Kemper, known as the Co-Ed Killer, is one of the most notorious serial killers in American history. His gruesome killing spree began in his teenage years and continued well into adulthood, with his most infamous murders occurring between 1964 and 1973. However, Kemper's violent tendencies were evident long before he escalated to murder. As a child, he was already displaying disturbing behaviors, including a fascination with killing animals and committing his first murder at the age of 15, when he killed his grandparents. This tragic event set the stage for a series of heinous crimes that would follow in his life. Born in 1948, Kemper grew up in a broken home where he endured severe emotional neglect, especially from his mother, who was verbally abusive and domineering. His mother constantly belittled him, calling him stupid and making him feel inferior, which may have contributed to his deep-seated hatred and violent impulses. Kemper's mother had a profound influence on his personality, shaping him into a young man who was deeply conflicted and angry. His relationship with her is considered a significant psychological factor behind his violent tendencies, and it seemed to fuel his desire for revenge, ultimately leading to his violent outbursts. Kemper's intelligence played a unique role in his criminal activity. Unlike many other serial killers who are apprehended due to impulsive behavior, Kemper's intelligence allowed him to evade capture for years. He was able to outsmart law enforcement and go unnoticed for a significant period of time, despite committing a series of gruesome murders. He had a remarkable ability to present himself as a friendly, intelligent, and non-threatening individual, which allowed him to blend into society while secretly harboring a dark side. His ability to manipulate those around him, especially his victims, showcased his intellectual cunning, making him a chilling figure in criminology. Kemper's first known victims were his grandparents, whom he murdered when he was just 15. After spending several years in a psychiatric institution following this crime, he was released and began to kill again. This time, his victims were young women, many of whom were hitchhiking or college students. Kemper's method of killing involved picking up his victims, taking them to secluded locations, and then overpowering them before murdering them. His murders were particularly brutal. He would often decapitate his victims and engage in acts of necrophilia. His ability to lure women, who saw him as harmless due to his calm demeanor and intelligence, made him a particularly dangerous predator. Despite his ability to evade capture for years, Kemper's downfall came when he finally confessed to the murders. After the brutal killings of 6 young women, his mother, and his mother's best friend, Kemper realized he could no longer contain his urges. In 1973, he called the police and confessed to his crimes, providing a chilling and detailed account of his killings. His confession was the result of deep psychological turmoil, with Kemper explaining that he felt both a sense of relief and guilt. His confession not only ended his killing spree but also revealed the extent of his mental instability and the disturbing psychological factors at play. Psychologically, Kemper's case presents a complex portrait of a man who was deeply scarred by his upbringing, yet possessed the intellectual capacity to carry out his crimes in a calculated and methodical manner. His relationship with his mother, his early signs of violence, and his ability to evade capture all contribute to the chilling nature of his story. His eventual confession highlighted the psychological burden he carried and the sense of control he gained over his life by finally coming forward. In the years since his capture, Edmund Kemper has become a notorious figure in the field of criminology, with experts studying his behavior to understand the psychological makeup of serial killers. His case underscores the importance of early intervention in cases of juvenile violence and the need for a more comprehensive understanding of the psychological factors that lead to such extreme criminal behavior. Kemper's ability to manipulate both his environment and the authorities, paired with his chilling history of violence, remains a haunting reminder of the complex interplay between psychology and crime.